The annual bash had a limit of 30 participants and always took place on the main street, starting at midnight. The Sky Stalkers watched from above to make sure everyone followed the rules, and anyone who violated them would be punished accordingly. While it was an excuse for all kinds of mayhem and debauchery, some submitted to the event simply for the adrenaline rush and to vent their frustrations in a safe environment. Many wore masks to conceal their identity, making each entrant an unpredictable wild card. Although they were not concerned with being judged, they were fiercely competitive. Every year, the bash brought a flood of visitors and money to the city. But at what cost? Despite it being one of the biggest nights of the year, what kind of price did these people pay for participating in this dangerous game? The sun began to set as New Yorkers rushed to make it home before the bash began. The city was aglow with the saffron hues of fading daylight, its high-rise window panes reflecting the luminescent spectacle, an almost melancholic preamble to the ensuing chaos. It was a sight that somehow seemed alluring, this calm before the storm. Every year on this day, the city would transform. Cosmopolitan sophistication would give way to raw survival instincts. The annual bash, a pursuit of mayhem for some, a necessity of release for others, was an event that transcended the norms of civilized society. Downtown, the main street lay in anticipation, soon to be the theater of turmoil. You are a New Yorker rushing home before the bash begins. What trouble do you run into? You are a shopkeeper on the Strip, closing up before the night's festivities. How does this play out? Some businesses stay open, offering exclusive upgrades to lucky bashies during the bash. Getting these special perks comes with a price. Unfortunately, cash and credit are not accepted, and one must barter for items that offer an advantage. The Sky Stalkers kept their vigil, their formidable figures imposing against the starry backdrop of the night sky. The bash was about to commence. You could taste it in the air, electric and foreboding. The businesses held within them tools of chaos and mayhem, tantalizing promises of power and survival for those brave bashies dauntless enough to seize them. Old Man McCarthy had transformed his quaint little bookstore into one of these chaos stations. Kathy Strutter's candle store now served as Mayhem Station. Similar transformations of businesses dotted around the Strip shared similar stories. You are a bashie signed up to participate in this year's bash. Where do you go on the Strip, and what tools of destruction do you buy to help aid you? What do these businesses have to offer, and what do you give up in return? Do they have any advice to share? The Sky Stalker marched towards the bashie, a vigilant eye on the mob of bashies surrounding him. He had been appointed to ensure that the rules of the bash were followed. He wore the signature emblem of the Sky Stalkers, a black horse embossed on a dark blue sash across his chest. The horse's eyes sparkled with a cold lunar brilliance beneath the clear moonlit night, mirroring the harsh gaze of its wearer. The Sky Stalker's steps were measured, each one carrying a weighty resonance that echoed around the emptied streets of New York. You are a bashie waiting for the bash to begin. As the Sky Stalker approaches, you size up the other bashies. What are they like? Describe them. The Sky Stalker announces the rules of this year's bash. What does he say, and how does the bashies react? The bash began with a grotesque display of violence from this year's host. Blood dripped from him as he gave a speech the bashies barely listened to. A demonic grin settled on his face, twisted and contorted by the gory spectacle he had just performed. His deep voice resonated through the macabre silence, snaking its way into the ears of the bashies who were too entranced by the sight before them to pay him any mind. All 30 of them stood in a semicircle, their breathing heavy with anticipation and unease. "And so it begins," the host's voice rang out, shattering the eerie tranquility that had momentarily held sway. "Let the gods of chaos guide your hand, and the spirits of discord fuel your rage. You are a bashie, What is the first thing you do once the bash begins? Do you attack right away or run for cover? You have nigh strip and more at your disposal. How will you use it? There are 29 others fighting to be the last one left alive. What will you do to come out on top?